Hello everyone, Shannon Flummerfelt for Flip Schools. Welcome to the Sustaining Improvement series. This is a series of 5 videos set up for central office administrators, and it introduces you to an improvement tool called the 5S. The 5S is great for sustaining improvement in your schools and in your district. In this particular video, we're going to focus on the 5th step out of 5, the sustaining step. So first of all, let's review what a 5S is. I'd like to comment again that there are 4 videos in this series besides this one, so be sure to listen to them so that you can understand the context of the whole 5S process and what it might mean for you as an instructional leader. But 5S is a very nice tool. In fact, you're probably already using it in your leadership practice, but maybe don't realize it. So hopefully this will just be an enhancement or maybe a reminder of a useful tool that you can use. When you're in a flipped environment and your schools are starting to flip and you're looking at how to use flipping within your district and blended instructional approaches and so on, there are going to be a lot of conversations going on about instruction and teaching and learning, lots and lots of points of change and improvement that are possible through this work. So this 5S can kind of help you keep track of what's going on in terms of helping you to focus on a particular area of improvement and then seeing it all the way through so that you actually sustain it. I know many school administrators and educators get so tired of having, round after round of new idea come and then go and come and go. And what a 5S will help you to do is actually get a hold of a good idea and take it all the way through so that it becomes best practice and then is sustained in your district. So simply put, a 5S is a visual management tool, or a map, if you will, for enabling you to collectively engage with stakeholders in your district in order to develop and maintain some kind of improvement, whatever it might be. There are 5 required steps: sorting and setting, shining and standardizing, and then sustaining. In the example today, we're going to take a look at 5S'ing, or going through these 5 steps of sort, set, shine, standardize, and sustain, and improvement in reading instruction. So let's see what we're trying to do here. For this 5th step is about sustaining. Again, what you'd really want to sustain in your district is not mediocre practice or not poor practice, but you want to be able to sustain best practice. And so if you work through the 4 steps before this, then you begin to sustain. That's when you really have a very, very nice improvement. The worst case is to sustain as an isolated step and not go through the improvement that's required before that. So let's say, for instance, that in your district, you're looking at reading instruction and you're figuring out, what really matters in good reading instruction. And through collaborative processes, you come up with this list of these 9 strategies. And there's all kinds of things here. We've got curriculum, we've got interventions, we have instructional technology, parental involvement, all kinds of things, as well as quality of reading. So these 9 items have been developed. Now, let's just quickly review steps 1 through 4. Again, these are in other videos in this series, so you can listen to those to get a little more insight. But basically, the 4 steps again, before sustaining, are to sort, set, shine, and standardize. So what would this mean? Well, for sorting, what we would do is we would take this list of 9 items, and there are so many different ways that you can sort. But if you're trying to go for a high priority improvement in instruction, then what you would do is decide, some of these we don't need to focus on. And so the first step in sorting is to set them all out and then set aside the strategies that aren't going to be the focus of the improvement work at hand. And in this case of that list, strategies 1, 3, and 5 were red tagged or set aside at this point in time. And then what you'll do is you move into step 2, which is trying to set the remaining strategies into categories of some type. And in the case of this improvement work, we're trying to make sure that they're prioritized based on the most pressing problem and then moving down from there. And as it turns out, strategy 2 is the one that pops out as being a high priority strategy. And this has to do with being timely in both assessment and intervention of students, especially those who are at risk in terms of reading. So we bring those high priority strategies forward, and then we have another category here of moderate priority. But that high priority one in setting then bops down and becomes actually the work of what happens in shining and standardizing. Shining is where we're trying to actually create best practice around timely assessment and intervention. So you can see you move right into problem solving with the 5S here, and it's really nice because it keeps people from just being concerned about a problem without seeing a possible solution. So in this particular example here, what we found out was that the pre-qualifying process for RTI, the right to intervention for reading, was taking very, very long. It was taking 20 weeks. And a pilot was developed that honed that time down to 5 weeks from 20 weeks. So students would move through the pre-qualification much more quickly. And so what happened here is, as this was piloted, there was, a lot of attention being paid to, does this new 5-week timeline work? What do we need to really keep and standardize? What needs to change and then become standardized and so on? So all of that work was done, and then the district is ready to standardize. And what this means is that, once you pilot something and figure out if it works or not, you want to go ahead and make sure that everybody is using it and using it well. So that's what standardization is about, step number 4, where you're making sure that that timeline, that 5-week timeline, if that's what your pilot ends up sticking with, is actually used, that the interventions are high quality, and that students actually do find that they improve in their reading achievement. So those are the 4 steps, and now once you've got things shined and standardized, what you want to be able to do is say, you know what, we now get this. We understand how to create a timely assessment and intervention for reading. So let's sustain this strategy. Let's not let it, fly out the window and we'll move on to something else. Let's sustain it. So how do you do that as a central office administrator? Well, what's being suggested here is that we're going to use the work of Bowman and Deal, and they have a 4-frame approach to leadership and organizational work. And what they say is that, look, if you examine any kind of a problem or solution from 4 viewpoints, a structural, a human resource, a political, and a symbolic view, and account for all of those frames together as a combined viewpoint, then you'll really be able to find success. And so we're going to turn to their work for the sustaining strategies. Now, there may be some other authors that you like a lot, but whoever you want to refer to in terms of sustaining, use it after you've gone through the other 4 steps in the 5S. And now when you want to sustain, this is when you bring forth these kinds of strategies. From a structural viewpoint, what you would do it as an instructional leader is say, look, if we've come up with this 5-week pre-qualification process for reading instruction, is it designed well? Does it actually work? What are the standards of performance? Are we seeing team structures? Are we seeing people becoming very goal-oriented, students and faculty and building administrators? Is there good communication? All of the elements that have to do with just a structural solution being decent are what you want to make sure are all in place so that you're able to sustain the strategy. In other words, the structure is not a barrier for sustaining. If you combine the structural view with a human resources view, what you'd be doing here is now you're focusing on, are needs actually being met? What are the needs? What are the organizational needs? What does the Board of Ed need? What does the community need? What does the state need? What do students need? And you're looking at needs and making sure that those are being met with a solution. And also what happens is that you want to make sure that there are incentives and rewards and recognitions in place when when the strategy is sustained and when success is arrived at. And this will really help you to be able to build a vision for what's possible. Also then, if you take a look from the political frame, now again, this isn't politics, it's the political frame. And what you're looking for here is making sure that whatever has been shined and standardized is actually strategically important. And if it's not valued, if there isn't a good values orientation for it, and it's not strategically important, then people won't pay attention to it. But if it is, there will be coalitions and support that develops. You'll see a critical mass or a tipping point develop in terms of making sure that this strategy is sustained. And then the last thing is a symbolic view. And again, you want to create work around this framework to make sure there are not barriers in place that are keeping you from being able to sustain. And the symbolic view will help you to understand that once you have something shined and standardized, at that point you want it to become a routine. You want it to become a tradition. You want to have some ceremony and celebration and special meaning associated with it. Really understanding that, when we do this, when we sustain this strategy, it is a part of our mission. It helps us to fulfill our purpose. So anyway, the structural, human resource, political, and symbolic frames can be looked at in terms of questioning whether or not they're in place or whether or not there might be barriers there. And if there's barriers, we need to get rid of them so that sustaining can actually happen. So you see that there are succinct things that leaders will do in all 5 steps of the 5S in sorting, setting, shining, standardizing, and sustaining. And, very simple, again, a very simple roadmap. It can be shared with those who you're engaging with here so they understand what it is, that's being worked on at each stage. I hope that this helps you to be successful in the work that you do with flipping your schools, that this improvement information will help you to be really understanding of how to help people through these change processes. If you'd like more information about flipping or improvement, go to the Flip Institute website. Just type in theflipinstitute.com. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the video.